Imagine a machine that works perfectly, but only for the people who built it. If you look at today's global economy, it's tempting to say it's broken. Prices rising, wages lagging, debt everywhere, markets swinging between panic and euphoria. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The global economy isn't malfunctioning, it's behaving exactly as designed. And once you see that design, it's very hard to unsee it. Right now, this matters more than ever, because we're told the system is going through a rough phase, that things will normalize, that growth will return, that stability is just around the corner. But what if instability is not a bug? What if it's a feature? To understand that, we need to stop thinking about the economy as a neutral force. It's not weather, it's not gravity, it's a set of rules, written by people, changed by people, and defended by people who benefit from them. Let's start with something simple: money. Most people think money comes from governments, or from central banks, or vaguely from the system. In reality, most money is created as debt, not coins, not notes, debt. When a bank gives a loan, it doesn't hand out existing money. It creates new money by typing numbers into an account. That money enters the economy already owed back with interest. That one detail changes everything. Because if money is born as debt, then scarcity is built in. Someone must always owe more than exists, and that more is the interest. So the system requires constant expansion, more borrowing, more credit, more leverage. If borrowing slows, the system tightens. Businesses struggle, people lose jobs, governments panic. This is why growth isn't optional, it's mandatory. Now zoom out. After World War II, the global financial system was rebuilt almost from scratch. New institutions, new rules, new power centers. The US dollar became the anchor, not because it was morally superior, but because it sat on top of the strongest economy and military. From that moment on, global trade, oil, debt, and reserves revolved around one currency. That gave the United States an extraordinary advantage. It could borrow in its own currency. It could run deficits without immediate punishment. It could export inflation to the rest of the world. Other countries didn't get that privilege, so they did what the system incentivized them to do. They borrowed in dollars. They adjusted their economies to serve global capital. They kept wages low to stay competitive. Again, not a mistake, incentive. Now, this is where the system gets quietly brutal. If a country grows too slowly, it struggles to service its debt. If it grows too fast, it risks inflation or capital flight. So it walks a tightrope, always adjusting policy to keep investors calm. Who are these investors? Not voters, not workers. Capital. Money that can move across borders in seconds. Money that demands returns. Money that punishes hesitation. So governments learn very quickly who they really answer to. Now let's talk about inequality, because this is where people often say, okay, this must be broken. Over the last few decades, productivity went up, technology improved, efficiency exploded, but wages stayed relatively flat. That gap didn't disappear, it went somewhere. It went to asset owners, stocks, real estate, private equity, anything that benefits from cheap credit and rising valuations. When central banks lower interest rates, they're not doing it for moral reasons. They're trying to keep the debt-based system running. Low rates push people to borrow. Borrowing pushes asset prices up. Asset inflation makes balance sheets look healthy. But if you don't own assets, you don't feel richer. You feel squeezed. Again, not accidental. The system rewards proximity to capital. Not effort, not usefulness, access. Now here's the uncomfortable math. If wealth compounds faster than wages, inequality is not just likely, it's inevitable. And reversing it isn't a technical problem, it's a political one.
Because the same system that concentrates wealth also concentrates influence. And influence resists change. So when people say, why don't governments just fix it? They're assuming governments sit above the system. They don't. They're inside it, bound by debt markets, trade agreements, currency pressures, rating agencies, election cycles. The system doesn't need villains. It runs on incentives. This is where the irony comes in. We celebrate market efficiency, but we're surprised when markets efficiently reward those already positioned to win. We praise globalization for lowering prices, but act shocked when it lowers labor power. We talk about financial innovation, but ignore that most innovation is about extracting yield from the same underlying activity. Nothing here is random. Publicly, we're told stories about resilience, about recovery, about temporary shocks. Privately, the system is doing something else. It's consolidating. Fewer firms, larger institutions, more systemic importance. Because in a debt-driven system, size equals safety, and safety attracts capital, and capital increases size. It's a loop. So where does this go? Long-term, systems like this don't collapse overnight. They stretch, they adapt, they absorb pressure, but the trade-offs accumulate. Higher debt levels, lower trust, more volatility, more dependence on intervention. Every crisis requires bigger tools. Every rescue raises the stakes. At some point, the question isn't whether the system works, it's who it works for, and whether society is willing to keep paying the price of stability that mostly protects the top. Here's the final thought. If the global economy were truly broken, it would stop producing consistent outcomes, but it doesn't. It reliably produces concentration. It reliably produces dependence on growth. It reliably produces winners and losers in roughly the same places. That's not chaos, that's design. So the real question isn't how do we fix the economy? It's far more uncomfortable. What kind of economy did we actually build, and how long are we willing to live inside it?